tutorial, we're going to be drawing a cute little giraffe. I'll be using brushes from the Dreamland Brushbox, and the canvas I'll be using is called Let's Draw, and it's a canvas for Procreate which you can download for free from my website, and I'll include the link below in the description. Okay, so let's dive in. I'll be using Lisa's pencil to draw both the rough sketch and the final line work. You of course can decide to use any pencil that you prefer, but if you are using the Let's Draw canvas, make sure that you start on the Draw Here layer, so we are essentially working underneath the canvas effects layer. So the first thing we want to do is create our framework, and once we've done that, we're going to move on to applying the final line work on a new layer. So we're first going to start with a circle. And you want to be sure that you are getting your movement from your shoulder and your arm, and you're not just using your wrist. So we want to create a nice loose sort of shape, and I'm going very light with my pencil initially, just until I feel comfortable that I'm starting to form the shape that I'm after. Now with this giraffe, you can decide to draw a really tall neck if you like. I'm going to go with sort of like a short one, and the reason why I'm doing that, I still want the, a giraffe to look kind of cute, and having a short stubby neck can look quite cute on a giraffe. So I'm just going to feel out my neck at this stage. So that's our head, the start of our head, and now we've moved on to forming the neck, and I just want to point out where that joining line is. You'll see it sits sort of right on the right hand side of the edge of the circle, and the other line joins kind of like a quarter way in. And now we need to draw, I'm just going to move that quickly. So you might want to think about drawing a little bit to the left of your canvas. And now we're going to form the shape of the body. So first we need, just going to draw a loose circle. It's slightly bigger than the head, and then the smaller circle at the back. So these are just kind of giving me an idea of how I can tackle this particular shape that I want to draw, and it's a bean shape essentially, and with the giraffe's back, their back slopes down. So although I didn't draw that second circle quite the right size, it has given me a marker. And with this stage of our drawing, it's very important that you allow yourself to explore the shapes and don't think that you need to get the correct size and shape the first time round. You can definitely go over a few times if you want to. You can erase, you can delete the layer, start again. Don't pressurize yourself into getting that perfect shape the first time. Okay, so we're just feeling out, you'll see that this layer is super rough, and we're just feeling out those shapes. And now I want to add an ellipse, kind of like an oval shape for the hind leg. So we're drawing our giraffe in a side profile, and my hind leg, so this is the upper part of the hind leg, the kind of meaty part. So that's kind of be about there. And just feeling out those legs. Again, you might want to create really short, stubby little legs, which can be very cute, or you want to create really long ones. I'm kind of going in between those two variations. And again, I'm just feeling this out. And when I'm happy with a shape, then I tend to sort of solidify the line work a bit more. So for our hind leg, we're going to start higher and curve it down. So you'll see this line is kind of doing that. And then as the line reaches the bottom of that circle, kind of flicks right to, it sort of curves to the right, and that indicates our joint. But what I want to do is just make his leg, my leg was getting a bit too thin. So I'm going to start a little wider. It's a bit better. Making sure I'm ending on the same plane as the front leg. And our back leg, the other back leg sort of peeks out. So that'll end a little higher, because with perspective, those things shouldn't necessarily be on the same plane. And then we need to create our front leg as well. So I'm just going to bring his leg out just a dash, just so that it peeks out in front. Again, we're aiming for the same sort of horizontal plane as the back one. So this, I would say, is probably your more difficult area in your giraffe. So give yourself some time to get the placements. And now I'm starting to see line work that I am happy with. So I am just going over that again. And as I said, solidifying that. And I'm creating the tail now. So you could decide if you want your tail to be up, which will be quite cute. But I'm just going to take it out to the right. And it ends with also like an oval shape. So let's move on to the snout part. So I'm going to go for a cute look, as I mentioned. So this is going to be quite a sort of big head in relation to the rest of the body. So with cute characters, the head tends to be quite large. So I've just taken that line from the top of the circle and I'm coming down. So you'll see it's pretty straight. So horses and giraffes have quite a straight nose at the top. Oops. And then just bringing that line down, and it meets where our circle ends. And then we want to add some ears. The giraffe ears have a very similar shape to a human eye, as opposed to a cat or even a dog, which is more loopy. So what I recommend when you are drawing cute characters, even though they are unrealistic and fantasy characters, I definitely recommend having a look at certain features of that animal, because it's those key things that maintain the overall look of the character. So have a look at what the giraffe's ear looks like. And of course it has those two little horns. And they've got like little tufts. So I'm just going to draw circles for that. So those are just my markers for those tufts. And then that other ear is probably going to peek out and do something like that. And then of course we have the giraffe mane. I'm sure it's called something else. So I'm just going to mark where I want that to go. So it tapers down towards the bottom. And I'm going to bring some of that hair forward for my little character. And then let's see how we can, where we place our little features. So I'm just going to add a little hump at the top there for his little nose, and then that one nostril is going to probably sit around there, and then his mouth, I want to make him smiling. And this is where you can have fun with features and you can decide how you want to approach that. But that is pretty much forming a cute little giraffe. And maybe what I want to do is I'm just assessing the size of things, and I just want to make sure that I am happy with the proportions. So I might have gone a little too big on his face. So what I want to do is I'm just going to use my liquify tool and just push that in a bit. I think that looks a bit better. The proportions are looking a bit more balanced. So now I'm going to move on to my final line work layer. So creating a new layer above that and turning down the opacity of my sketch layer. As mentioned, I'm still using Lisa's pencil for this. And I'm going to set that to multiply. And start at the little nose. I'm going to keep a little bit of his bottom chin area. So I'm just carrying on with that line of that circle. Of course, there's no rule where you want to start filling in your line work. I don't always start on the face. So although I had pretty straight tube-like shapes, I'm still interpreting the final shape when I draw the final line work. So his little hair is going to come like that. And my strokes are a little looser. And that other little horn, which of course has a special name, which I can't recall at this stage, that's going to peek out through the other side. So I'm just going to move on to the neck. So if you need to draw a straight line like I just have, you'll notice that I slow down quite a bit and try to relax while I was drawing that line. If we try and force it, you might get a little bit of a wonky line. So if you're struggling to control your pencil, it could be that your speed is too... oh, I've got a little spider. Hello, little spider. There you go. The speed of your stroke could be too fast. So try and slow down if you have to. There's absolutely no reason to rush. We've done all the hard work of creating our framework. This is the fun part. And then just his mane has got all sort of fluffy edges. So I use more of a loose approach to my line work when I'm drawing fur and hair. I think our little guy is taking shape. Okay, so I'm going to move on to applying some color. And the first thing I want to do though is I'm going to just set up my line work layers the way I like using it. This is my personal preference, and obviously it's a style choice that you may want to try something different, but this is how I approach my line work. So I'm going to duplicate this layer, and then I'm going to use Gaussian blur and just blur that slightly, maybe something like that, and then set that layer to color burn. And then this is where I usually experiment with the opacity of these layers. So I'm going to bring that down quite a bit. And now I'm going to group that. So now I know that that's my line work. And sometimes I keep the drawing layer, the sketch layer in as well. I'm going to set that to multiply for now and keep it in and see where that takes me. So I'm going to set or create a new layer above that, but then move this above everything. So at the moment, all my line work layers are going to be sitting above the color layers that I'll be applying. However, what I normally do is create a shadow layer, and that I place right at the top. So that's what I'm going to do now. And then I'm going to set that to multiply and choose, you'll see it's in the purple range, but it's quite desaturated and it's just above halfway. And the brush I'm going to use is actually from Aquarelle 2, but you could use the detailed brush with grain for this shadow. I just particularly like the Aquarelle 2's shadow brush. I can't seem to get enough of that one, so I'm going to be using that for my shadow layer. And just to let you know, so my light source, I'm kind of thinking is going to come in that direction. And very loosely, I'm just using that as a loose guide. And I'm figuring out where the light would then hit the giraffe if that was the case. Oops. And with this brush, if you want to intensify the results, you just go over it a few times until you're happy with the actual intensity level. And then I'm just going to smudge that. You can use any smudge tool, it doesn't matter. Or any smudge brush, should I say. And then this leg will be in shadow. And this will have shadow. Again, we're going loose and not necessarily perfect. I just want to create some kind of definition on the body. And we'll probably have shadow that does something like that on his mane. And I'm just choosing to apply darker areas here and there. Okay, so you'll see it's a pretty simple layer. I haven't gone into too much sort of complicated detail. It's just simply for a little bit of definition. So now I'm going to move on to applying some color. So let's choose, I'm choosing a light cream-ish color. And coming back to our Dreamland brushes, I'm going to go with the wet paint. And we're going to apply overall color. I haven't lifted my pencil yet, but you definitely can if you want a few strokes variation. Like that stroke color was a little bit too different, so I just smudged it in a bit. And I will probably lighten this layer. I think the color might be a bit too intense, but I'm going to continue until I'm done. So with this brush, you're getting color variation every time you lift the pencil, which is quite nice for some interesting results and not a monotone sort of look. So my sketch layer is becoming a little bit distracting for me. So I'm going to turn that off in a second, but I'm just finishing this up. And as I pick up my pencil, I'm creating different color variation, which is quite interesting, and then just smudging here and there. I'm pretty happy with that. So just turning this off. Checking my work. Okay, so this might be a little bit too intense, so I'm just going to turn that down a bit. I'm just going to make a dash lighter and probably desaturate it. So we're probably looking at something like that. And now I'm going to move on to applying some sort of cheeks and a little snout area. So I'm going to use a... I'm going to start with that. It's quite a pinky color. I think I'm going to use one of the shaders. So I'm going to use the medium grunge shader. And I'm just lightly feeling out the area that I want to fill. And probably want a little cheek. And some in these ears. Maybe something up here. Definitely some on his tummy. I'm just using circular motions with my pencil and just lightly filling what I want. So I'm going to blend that top area. Just to soften the, you know, as it grades into the other one. Or the transition, should I say. Yeah, I think I'm pretty happy with that application of the pink. We can always come back if we want to accentuate that. But now I'm going to work on some of the spots. So I'm going to choose that color. It may be too dark. Maybe let's hop over to an in-betweener. So it's pretty brown. And I'm going to use one of the layering brushes. So I'm going to use the intense grain to apply our little spots. And I just want to test the color first. Yeah, I think I'm happy with that. Okay, so with this brush, if you want more texture to show through, then apply more pressure. Something like that. So as I've built my shape and I was happy with it, then I applied pressure to show more texture. And you can decide to apply the markings in a realistic way or more whimsical way. I'm probably going to go with a more realistic look. And if you're not sure what they look like and you feel like you need a bit of help, then definitely look at reference. There's absolutely nothing wrong in using reference just to guide you on, what the shapes look like. So I'm kind of winging it at this stage. So there might be a lot of undoing and deleting, but that's okay. So they get smaller. When they get to the head area. That's a funny one. So I'm just going to go ahead and fill them all in. I'm pretty happy with that, and I just realized that I didn't fill in the tail. I'm just going to come back to that layer, and I just need to turn off my canvas effect so that I can pick that color. And just using that same brush again. Okay, so let's do some hooves. I'm just using a kind of a gray version of the original, and I'm going to use the oscillate brush. This creates quite a nice sort of wet effect. And then on a new layer, we're going to move on to applying some color to the mane. And I'm still on the oscillate brush. So what I want to do is I'm applying quite a dark color initially. And you'll see there's some variation in color when I press down on my brush. You'll see it kind of creates a lighter area. And now we're going to have some fun applying some texture on top of that. On a new layer, I'm going to choose a lighter color. It might even be that light. Let's have a look. And choosing the Stardust grain, even lighter. Let's have a look at the effect. So overall, just going overall, applying that color. We can always change the opacity and intensity, etc. But I quite like giving it that extra layer of texture. I'm winging it at this stage. And that's the whole point about experimenting when you draw. You might discover some interesting effects. Okay, so I think it's too intense in terms of the color. I'm going to try and see what we look like using the blend modes. That looks quite interesting. Yeah, I think that looks pretty cute. So I've set that to screen and I've just brought down the opacity. And what I want to do now is see if I use a pencil. Okay, so what I want to do is create just tiny lines of hair definition. Just here and there I'm going over with my pencil. So we're building up that texture. Of course, someone decided to mow their lawn when I started recording. So sorry about that. Okay, so I want to match that color of his mane a bit better with the spots. Well, actually the other way around. I want to match the spots better with his mane. So I just want to, so I'm on that spots layer and just want to adjust that a dash. It looks better. I think our little guy's coming together. And now I just want to add shadow underneath him. So on a new layer right at the bottom. And coming back to that shadow color that we originally used, I'm going to use this oscillate brush. Too big. And just here and there, apply some shadow work. And then just bring that down so it's not so intense. And now what we want to do is start adding some interesting enhancing markings and some grungy bits and some texture here and there. So on a new layer above everything, including our shadow, choosing the same color as my original line work. Oh, what I need to do first though, so we've got our layer on top there, which I'm going to leave. But the first thing I want to do is actually create a layer right underneath everything. And for now, I'm going to use the same color. And I just want to add some enhancements on the edges. And it does look intense at the moment, but we're going to bring that down. And it's just here and there. Again, this is a stylistic choice. And what I like to do as well is use an eraser with one of the textures. So I'm going to start with the subtle scratches. And just here and there, you'll see, you start seeing those scratches appear, which is quite interesting. And then using my pencil, very lightly, I'm just going here and there as well because I want to really accentuate those scratchy marks. And then bring that opacity down. Set that to multiply. I wanted to interact with the shadow underneath. Maybe bring that up a dash. And then on that layer right at the top, set that to multiply. We're still on our original sepia line work layer, line work color. And I'm going to use the burnt scratches brush to create some interesting markings here and there. And it's just here and there. Again, we can play with the opacity of this. But all of this is adding some lovely grungy bits. Using my pencil. Making this area a bit more pronounced, the shadow. And I'm going to bring that opacity down a dash. Maybe even play with the blend modes. And then what I like to do is really layer that texture more and more. And I prefer using a new layer for each one because that way it gives me control over the effect. So I'm going to go to the streaky and cracked brush, and the actual texture, let me just check. The texture is maybe not large enough, so I'm going to come over to grain and then just let's see what 45% does. I know that it looks scary, but don't worry, we're going to experiment. Oops, setting that to color burn. Let's have a look. Bring that opacity down. We're starting to get some interesting results, but I just want to bring that back to multiply. I think I prefer color burn. And then creating a new layer underneath that, setting that to multiply. I'm going to use a much lighter color, using the subtle scratches. So because we have that top layer that has you know, artwork on it, it's interacting with the scratches, which is quite interesting. And I might need to just tone that down in terms of its saturation. So I'm just going to bring that down. Looks a bit better. And then play with the opacity. So at this stage, it's all about building your texture. You might want to have stopped quite a while ago, but I like experimenting like this because it helps me sort of see how I want to take my artwork in a new direction. Maybe it's too much, maybe it's too little, but yeah, I'm going to keep going because I'm quite enjoying this. I hope you are too. So on a new layer, once again, this time we're going to do some wet bleed pencil enhancing. So just here and there. Actually, I'm going to leave it at that size. I'm going to add sort of like bleed edges. And again, beauty about Procreate is we can play with the opacity. So just here and there. These are all stylistic choices. And let's have another look at some texture. Okay, so that's quite large. Coming over to my grain, I'm going to say 20%. Again, could be even smaller. 10%. I'm just looking for grungy bits and stuff I don't like. I'm going to erase. So let's use the edge enhancer. Definitely experiment with your eraser as well. I am. And you can always tone things down. Like I might want to tone down areas on his snout. That would be that layer, yeah. And then as a final bit of detail, I like adding, especially when there's fur involved or hair, I use Lisa's pencil and I just create markings like this, just for on the edges. And often even do it in a much lighter color as well, like we did with the other layer. Oh, I've set it to multiply, that's why. So what I'm going to do is, on a new layer, create my highlights. Neglected his tail a bit. And now lastly, I just want to check how far I can push the texture. So please do bear with me. Using that same brown color, I'm going to use the subtle scratches again. But if you can recall, we've used it a few times, so I don't want to duplicate the pattern. So I want to change the grain. So again, I'm coming over to my grain and I'm going to go 30%. And just here and there. Add some interesting grain, and once again, let's play with the opacity and blend mode. I think that's quite interesting. I really like what's happening there, but I'm not so wild about that. So I'm going to go in and maybe get rid of the harshness there. But maybe I want some there. So as you can see, we are experimenting and starting to form some interesting texture. on our palettes, on our canvas. And again, you can blend areas if you don't want it so harsh. But I quite like the way that's turning out, and yeah, you can decide to ramp up the texture or tone it down, but I hope these ideas gave you some good techniques that you can use in your own work. Hope that was helpful. Thanks for watching. Happy creating!